What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. We have a banger of a guest for you today. It's the big O, Glenn Ordway. Why are we bringing Glenn Ordway in? Well, simple. The Patriots are in disarray right now. The disarray is familiar in some ways to the disarray we saw in the early 90s when WEEI was breaking on the scene and Glenn Ordway was a fixture on that channel. Now, Glenn, of course, was with EEI all the way through the 2000s, so he went through the Parcells era, the Carroll era, and the Belichick era. He's seen all the iterations of the Patriots and their quarterbacks and how ownership over the course of time has tried to get it right. So we bring in Glenn right now because the Patriots are in a position that's actually reminiscent of where they were in 1997. They had moved on from Bill Parcells. He'd been a pain in the ass. But they wanted to have the continuity that Parcells brought with guys like Andy Wazenchuk and some of his coordinators. So all the guys that stuck around the craft said, we're going to keep him. We're going to get a better coach in terms of being able to relate to the players. And they tried to thread the needle with Pete Carroll, who was an excellent football coach, but probably too much of a turnaround at that time and a little too inexperienced to be in that position. Patriots swan dived. 4 years later, Bill Belichick was back. Now, this year again, they made a move. But because of the 6 Super Bowls that they had won, the litany of AFC Championship game appearances, the fact that they had, under Bill Belichick, risen to a level in professional football that no franchise had ever attained, they reasonably wanted to, despite the fact that they have been skipping along in the mud for 4 years, they wanted to maintain the continuity back to the things that Bill had brought aboard. So you keep Mayo, you keep Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh because you think that they have some of the acumen that you hope. You make sure that you keep Slater around. You want to have that link to the glory years that Belichick authored. I'm going to bring Glenn in here. But before I do, I want to make one thing really clear. There's an idea right now that the Crafts were dying to get rid of Bill Belichick. I mean, maybe by the end of last year they were. But going into last year, they didn't want to have to fire the greatest coach of all time. They gave him every opportunity after 2022. And the Matt Patricia Joe Judge season. They said, you know what? One more chance. We expect the playoffs, but one more chance. Robert Kraft had been expecting to win a playoff game since Tom Brady left. And they never did. One more chance. Just hopefully we make the playoffs. And then at the beginning of the year in 2023, Kraft's like, we have a really tough schedule. Almost hedging his bet. And then the team was so bad, losing 34-0 and 38-3 in back-to-back weeks to the Cowboys and Saints. They became a laughingstock. There was no way they could bring Bill back. The Patriots had to figure out a way to move on from Bill. And the way to do that, they thought, was, well, we've got an agreement here to keep Gerard around. When Bill's contract was going to expire in 2025, we were probably going to make the move. Hopefully he broke that record of Shula's. But we're going to have to do it now. We're going to keep our fingers and toes crossed. But they didn't want to have to do this. They did it. They're in it. They're in it up to their eyeballs now. All of them. So let's process it with the great Big O. All right, ladies and gentlemen, could not be happier than to bring in a guy who is always at our disposal, but we forget to reach out to him. It's the great, the legendary, the godfather of sports talk radio, in my opinion, nationwide. It's Glenn Ordway, formerly of WEEI. He's coming into the show for a variety of reasons. The number one reason, Glenn, and welcome first.
Oh, welcome to you, Tommy. I think I can end it right there after that introduction. Oh, my God, what are you drinking today?
I just had a coffee and a water.
Oh, okay.
Couple of zins, though.
Right.
Couple of zins. Listen.
I think so.
There's a 1-6 Patriots football team down there in Foxborough. They've lost
Having
6
fun
straight,
yet?
each one by increasingly more embarrassing circumstances, and the head coach just opted to call the players soft before a 6-hour flight home from Europe. This is going to be tough to shake this start, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's getting worse, I think, in the fact that Bill Belichick, who heard Robert Kraft last week on Charlemagne the God's podcast, a radio show, he heard him say, I fired Bill Belichick. And, oh, yeah, I wanted to control Bill Belichick a little bit more. I should have in the long run. I think that's going to make it 10 times worse, Tom. It's human nature. And I know people are going back and forth with this Belichick stuff right now. And I'm not saying that Belichick deserved to be back as coach of the football team this year, certainly general manager of the football team. But on the other hand, when you ignite him like this, and he's got the juice, he's got like 15 different media appearances every week. It's going to get worse, I think. Just all of the stuff around him. And you know, the media, we all love this stuff. This is all personal, and this is all going to blow up.
We got an 82-year-old and a 72-year-old acting like 15 and 13-year-olds by not being able to move on. You got Maye on the crossfire. What's lost in all this, as much as folks look at ownership and say, my God, what were you thinking about? Wouldn't life have been a lot easier for the Crafts if Bill had just managed to get to 8-9 or 10-7 last year? They really did not want to fire the guy. But 4-13 after it was beyond the pale.
Yeah, but you know as well as I do, you can see it in the difference of the individual time management and penalties and everything else. Bill's coaching wasn't a problem. Bill can still coach. He'll be coaching somewhere else next year. Bill's problem was the front office. The job just got too immense for him, and he made tons of mistakes and put bad personnel out in the field, and that he had to live with. But I feel bad for Gerard Mayo, because what you did, and according to Bob Kraft, he had made the decision 5 years ago. Based on what? I don't know. But he made that decision, and you put Gerard Mayo with very little talent and a quarterback, a rookie quarterback that might be terrific down the road, might be great, but right now is still learning the ropes, and you put him into that mess and expected him to succeed?
Yeah, and that is, if everything goes perfectly, then we could manage. But what has actually happened, Glenn, is worst case scenario on every front. And just to look at the timeline, 2019, moving on from Brady, finishing the season after an 8-0 start the way they did, that's when Bill was kind of first on notice. And to go 7-9 that year, Kraft was already starting to tap his toe. They played better in 2021, and then Bill said, hey, what's the worst that can happen after Josh leaves? I'll just put these guys in. Everything will be fine. I'll pump the tires on my second-year quarterback before training camp. We'll be okay. I'm still Bill Belichick. Don't forget that. And then they have a catastrophic season. And he basically won't talk to the kid. And then 2023 rolls around, and the ego's into it. And Mac had dismissed, had been disloyal to the point where Bill said, I don't want to work with him anymore. And now you had all the money spent in 2021 free agency, a demolished first-round quarterback, the Brady decision, the fact that he's still not a lot of fun to work with, and the belief that, well, God, I mean, can Gerard do any worse than what Bill's doing? I think that's basically how it went.
And what's the answer to that? Maybe. Maybe he can do worse. Because they're doing worse right now.
No.
Even they're doing worse.
I put a poll question out, actually, Glenn.
I saw it today.
Yeah, and are the Patriots better off?
You should have put a caveat. You should put a caveat.
What?
Because the caveat in all of this stuff is, what is Drake Maye going to be? If Drake Maye turns out to be your guy, then we're going to look at this 3 years from now and say, oh, let me look back at 2024, and we were better off. But right now, I don't think anybody can see how you're better off. Defense was supposed to keep you in games this year, Tom. They stayed in games last year. They were within, one score in 8 games last year. That doesn't look like it's going to be the case this year because the defense can't hold up. They can't stop the run right now. And a lot of that has to do with Bentley being out injured. But you're going to get more injuries as time goes on. I thought the defense was going to keep them in games this year and at least make them competitive. And you build on a new quarterback and you build on the offense. Good luck with that.
Yeah, I mean, on every level, they had talent. They had Jabril Peppers at the back end of the defense, who I thought was the team MVP the last 2 years. He's not going to play for them, perhaps, ever again. You had, in the middle, Bentley, very, very good interior linebacker and Barmore up front.
Stop the run.
So
Yep.
Bill conveniently leaves out the fact that those three players aren't playing for the team anymore.
Yeah, he did.
And the other interesting thing is when he highlights the fact that these guys all got re-signed. Bill, you know who didn't get re-signed? Isaiah Wynn didn't get re-signed. N'Keal Harry didn't get signed.
Oh, okay.
You know, go on. Dalton Keene, Devin Asiasi, Cole Strange isn't going to get re-signed. Mac Jones got released. Jonnu Smith is someplace else. These are the key guys who came in. So the team re-signs Josh Uche and re-signs Anthony Jennings. Well, that's because they were actually good players. It's the offense that got demolished by Bill. And that's why I think it was the notion of, we're not going to have him do it again. It can't get any worse. But it has gotten worse, I think, because... Go ahead, Glenn.
Well, you look back a couple of years ago, and we all said, oh, my God, Matt Patricia is the offensive coordinator. What the hell is he doing? Well, 2 years later, you straddle a rookie, a first-year head coach, and you give him an offensive coordinator that may be pretty good with quarterbacks. He certainly was with 4 different quarterbacks in Cleveland last year, but he's never really called plays, Tom. And now you're saddling him. You're putting a rookie quarterback out there, and I hate to say it. Here's what I fear for Drake Maye, is that he's going to have 3 offensive coordinators in the next 3 years.
Exactly, which will be, if they go through another one this year, it will be 5 for the team in 5 seasons. And we were at the Super Bowl. We had a conversation with Robert Kraft, and he had mentioned the intention of looking at more GMs before they finalize who was going to be the ultimate GM after the draft. And I said, wait a minute. So you're going to go through the draft with Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh, and then in May or June, you might then decide, I'm going to hire somebody else entirely. You're going to give them that chance to set the stage. I said, that's kind of Jets behavior right there. And 5 offensive coordinators in 5 years would be Jets behavior. This team, I think, light is dawning on Marblehead a couple of years later than it should have, that they're not just arriving at bad, they have been bad, and this is the beginning of a second rebuild. The first one was 2020.
Yeah, but if you look at teams in the league, and you brought up the Jets, I could go through 8, 9, 10 different teams that have been rebuilding for the last 25 years.
Exactly.
That's the NFL. And how do they get out of it? Well, they get out of it because they luck out and get themselves a phenomenal quarterback. And then you play around with the salary cap and you're able to build pieces around him. And you've got something a la Kansas City. But even Kansas City the year before with who? Alex Smith? Was that who was the quarterback at the time? Yeah,
Alex Smith.
They
were
still
playoff team.
They were good. They were still pretty good. So they already had built something when they got Mahomes. So here's the dilemma the Patriots face. Same thing all of these other teams have faced for years. And that is, got to find a quarterback. Got to go to the 6th round of the draft, Tommy, and you got to find some guy deep in the 6th round that's underrated out there, and then you turn the whole franchise around. This is not going to be an easy fix, and all I have to do is give you a history out there in the National Football League to prove my point.
But I can flip it and say, for instance, you got a guy like, you can build around the quarterback if you like, but you could be the Detroit Lions and have one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Matt Stafford and never win a blessed thing. And then make a trade and have a new head coach in and then become a better team because you have Jared Goff acquired by trade. You can be the 49ers and have Kaepernick and Blaine Gabbert and everybody else play, but you've created a foundation and a system where you can drop in a player like Jimmy Garoppolo. Or you could drop in Brock Purdy. Yes, they did. They developed the system.
To go back to your point on the draft. Maybe they should not have gone for quarterback. And nothing against Drake Maye. I think he's going to be very good. He certainly teases you right now to the point where he's going to be very good. But you weren't ready for him.
Nope.
Because you didn't have the specialty players. You certainly didn't have the offensive line unless you were planning on going out and signing a couple of other guys that you never were able to sign. So you didn't have the pieces around him. So now what do you do? And you know that Jacoby Brissett wasn't going to hold up.
My point. This is what I said the entire time leading up to the draft. You got to go ahead.
You were right. You want to hear that again? You were right.
I wanted to trade down. I wanted to see J.J. McCarthy come in, perhaps a tackle, whichever one you wanted. Zing zang. The next thing you know, you can get your wide. You still could have gotten Jalen Polk dropping 1 million passes in the second round, even if you did that. But you know what?
Tommy, who believed in Brissett? But who believed that Jacoby Brissett was going to be able to do it? I know you did. Okay, shame on you.
I believed he'd be fine. But when you, he's running
Joe
around with
Flacco
DeMontre
might have been a better
Jacobs.
choice right now. Flacco might have been a better choice.
You've been talking to people. DeMontre Jacobs and Michael Jordan are in front of him. My God. I mean, they couldn't win. And those guys are, God bless them, performing well. Let me hit a couple other topics here real quick.
Go ahead.
I look at Drake Maye, and I believe that he is, regardless of what direction philosophically they should have gone in April, the perfect friggin' fit for a rebuilding team. He's country. He's all shucks. He's all football. He's not one of these emo quarterbacks who's all concerned about the marketing. I don't think that they could have done any better in terms of toughness, resiliency, and makeup than Drake Maye.
See, the problem with quarterbacks, and we saw it with a little bit premature. We saw it with Mac Jones. Mac Jones came out of college and was exactly as advertised, the most prepared NFL quarterback with a low ceiling. And that's exactly what we saw. He made the Pro Bowl early on. Granted, he was like the 8th guy that they picked or 9th guy they picked, but we saw that he understood the game enough to be able to play at the NFL level. The problem was couldn't throw the ball deep. He had limitations to his game. I see just the opposite with Drake Maye, a guy who's got to learn the game right now, simply is still making mistakes because he doesn't understand what he's seeing out there. But, man, he's got the tools. So it's got a great high ceiling. But if you don't get some people around him, Tom, to protect him at the offensive line, and guys you're going to throw the football to, what's he going to be in 2 or 3 years? You've seen these guys before. Dime a dozen guys that are really talented, have got great upside, and they're playing with bad teams, and they just never develop into what they should be.
That's why I want to go in the Wayback Machine, because there is an element of Drake Maye that reminds me of Bledsoe. And Bledsoe was not having to do with foot speed or athleticism or even arm strength, because I think Bledsoe was ridiculous in terms of arm strength, and Maye can probably throw with better touch. Be that as it may, I think Bledsoe was a very stable leader, very stoic leader. He'd eat a poop sandwich with no bread and not say a thing, and he did it for years. And I think because of that, the team was able to succeed with Bledsoe because of the leader, that style of leader that he was. And I had plenty of misgivings about him as a quarterback and his limitations eventually. But that's why I like Maye relative to that kind of a leader. You don't see that?
I hear what you're saying. I do. I hear what you're saying, and I think it's an interesting comparison when you look at the two. I would say this though. What is the culture of this team going to be like?
Right.
So Drake Maye may have his head on straight, and he may be the leader of this team. But if you've got guys doing what some of these guys are doing right now on social media, out there on the roadways and doing different stuff, what are you going to have here, Tom? You know, the guys could run away with the franchise, and Gerard Mayo could be sitting there doing whatever he can possibly do and still not get command of that locker room. And that, to me, is the most important thing out there. When you look at successful coaches out there, it's all they have command of that locker room. They're able to sell their message to those players. They buy into it. And whatever you can say about Belichick, he sold the goods. They bought it. It might have been a lot of BS, but he was able to sell it. If you don't get that, you're going to end up with a quarterback that's got great tools, great potential, and may never reach that potential. You know, I think Belichick was right when he said, yeah, I like some of the things I'm seeing from Drake Maye. Let's wait and see what he's like when the games become more competitive. And that is exactly what I think we need to see. Okay, we see now that he can throw the ball. He can get out of messes. He's got a little bit of Josh Allen in him when a play breaks down. But what happens when the games become competitive and he's faced with a big 3rd and long, and it's a huge play that you've got to make if you want to win the game. Something Tom Brady always completed.
And that's what I feel comfortable with him to be able to do the right thing and be in the right place. Maybe not this year, but eventually, because I think he's got that kind of monkish devotion to getting better. But unless you have assistant coaches, coordinators who are leaning on players, and you've acquired the right kind of players, Drake Maye might be doing everything right, taking the right read, and he's looking up, and Javon Baker's at 14 yards instead of 19, or Jalen Polk is too close to Hunter Henry, or whatever else. It's the details. And that's what happens when you bring a staff with you wherever you go. And this group.
Familiarity, yeah.
The group, you all know what the other person is coaching. You all know what the standard is. And that's what's really hard to nail right now.
Yeah, you tell me, because you're there. You had Slater. You had Devin McCourty. You had all of these leaders that were there before. So that if any guy fell off the rails, and guys fell off the rails. Sure. We remember guys showing up late for practice. There are all sorts of stuff that happened over the years. How did they always get through those little moguls? How did they always do it? You know why? Because they always had leadership in that locker room. They always had guys, veterans, who said, hey, get your shit together here, okay? The Devin McCourtys, the Slaters, all of those guys, Matt Light. They don't have any of those guys right now, do they?
Oh, they do. And here's what the interesting thing is.
Are they outnumbered? Are they outnumbered?
They're hurt. Your best offensive leader is David Andrews. He's done for the year.
Good point.
Your best defensive leader is Bentley. He's hurt. Regardless of what Jabril Peppers did, as regrettable and perhaps, down to your marrow offensive as to what he did. He was a very good on-field leader for that team. They're all gone. So now you have, the other day, you had Jonathan Jones, who's a good player and a solid player. He's one of the most tenured players, but he's also a nickel cornerback. And he's,
limited playing time. Yeah.
So it's hard.
And I think if you look at bad franchises over the years, you could look at the Jets, who still struggle, even though they thought they had themselves the franchise quarterback, and they certainly have a lot of really good personnel on both sides of the ball. And look at where they are right now. Those franchises always have that same problem. It's culture. It's trying to build something. And the Patriots never had that issue. And now they're going to have to fight to get all of that back, Tom. Glenn, and I don't know how long that takes.
Glenn, in 1993, Bill Parcells was the head coach, and he had tremendous success and some blips along the way. He left voluntarily.
Yep.
The Crafts did not want to have a continuation of Bill, so they created a triangle of authority by keeping people on. They wanted Bobby Greer to stay. They wanted Andy Wozinchuk to stay. But they brought in a head coach who would be a little bit more palatable for the players, was a little bit easier.
Pete was Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. That's what he was at that time.
Kraft's trying to split the baby by, we're going to maintain our continuity with our personnel group in Bobby Greer and Andy Wozinchuk and so many others, but we're going to bring in a new head coach and it's going to all mesh together.
Are they making the same mistake, though, Tom? I mean, Elliot Wolf coming out and saying we're getting away from the hard-ass approach.
Isn't it the same thing?
Mayo saying the same thing. He said the same thing. It is the same thing. There's nothing wrong with the hard-ass approach. I'm not saying you can't be personable in the process of being hard-ass and creating a culture in which mistakes, especially repeated errors, are not allowed in the organization. We've got to all figure out, do all the little things, and make it work into big things. I think it's a huge mistake when you hand over the keys and tell the guys, hey, hot tub's open, boys. Let's have some fun. Not good.
And the hard thing about it is, because Bill was who Bill was and continues to be, and he won 6 Super Bowls here, and his legacy was so overarching to the entire organization, the Crafts could not see their way clear to moving on entirely. So basically, I've said this a number of times, he was a giant sequoia, and they just decided, okay, this year we're going to just remove the sequoia, we'll get it out of there, and we'll see how everything looks in the big crater that's left behind. And some of these things are not going to do well in the sun. Now that the sun is hitting
I'm not saying that Bill was probably easy to manage for the ownership, for the Crafts, okay, for either Robert or for Jonathan. There's no question, we know he was probably extremely difficult. And even though they owned the franchise, probably kept him out of a lot of stuff. And I know there are different ways that you can do it. Bill's way is not the only way. But I think there are other ways of doing it without suddenly just handing over the keys and saying, we're going to be soft. And then 7 weeks into the season, you come out and you tell everybody, I've got a soft team.
But the interesting thing was they were not soft. They practiced harder and longer in training camp and hit more than they had under Bill in the last 5 years.
Not to win in games.
Pardon me?
They're not
No,
doing
they're not.
it in games.
They're not. They're clearly not. And there's
Kids
more
have to run
injuries right
down
now.
last
It's the
couple
interesting.
games. Yeah.
There's more injuries too. So I wonder, Bill started backing that stuff off for player health down the line because they were a playoff team and they had to be concerned about January. And Mayo ratcheted it back up, and now there's a bunch of injuries. I'm not saying one led to the other. It's coincidental and anecdotal, but it's interesting to look at it. He did go tougher physically, but the messaging to me, Glenn, has been the biggest problem. You can't say my team is soft and then the next day, 16 hours later, have to come back and say, I meant to say they're playing soft, they're not soft. You can't say burn some cash and then say, I didn't mean burn some cash. You can't say that Jacoby was outplayed by Drake and then say, but since April, Jacoby outplayed Drake. Any number of things that have gone on.
I know this will probably piss you off.
He wasn't ready for it. Go ahead.
No, I know this is going to probably piss you off and piss off, Phil, Barry, and others in the media. But I think the mistake that Gerard Mayo made, and he's a terrific guy, as we all know, and he was a great player. I think the mistake he made is that he tried right out of the gate to go with the opposite of what Bill did. Bill gave you guys absolutely nothing, wouldn't answer a question, wouldn't tell you about injuries or anything else. And Gerard opened up because he wanted to have a relationship with the media, something that Bill really didn't have. And I think in the end, it burned him because he talked too much. And now his words are being thrown back in his face. I mean, the media is making a big, huge deal about this soft statement he made. And then he kind of backed off of it the morning after the game. And so what did Gerard gain out of any of that? And I'm not saying that he should have been Bill. He shouldn't have been Bill. Okay, I'm not saying, you sit there and you're rude, but you can answer fewer questions. Don't open up the curtain. Don't let everybody see everything.
But here's the thing. It's been 10 months, and nobody, has had a closer relationship in the media with Gerard than I have. It's been 10 months.
You did the show with him.
And he has done, over the course of time, I think he got an extended amount of leeway and a high number of mulligans for just being overly glib. I think we in the media gave him innumerable passes early on.
Of course, it's your advantage. Absolutely.
And I think we all did. I think we all did too. Just as
how's it working out now, though?
But that's the thing is you have to have a message when you go to the podium that you have preordained you're going to say. Now, Bill's full of shit when he says that he would never call the player soft. I had a player call me, he's called us soft all the time. He just didn't do it in the media. But the interesting thing about...
That's what Gerard should have done. That's what he should have done, Tommy. He should have said that behind closed doors to the players.
And Bill
then to the media say, we could be tougher. We could play a little bit more physical than we did today.
That's not who we are. Much easier. That's not who we are out there. That looked like a soft football team. That's not who we are. We're a team that does this.
The message is important, especially in Boston. I can tell you that. Being outside of Boston, the message is very, very important because people take to heart every little word you say. And people in the media, including myself, when I was there, just blow it all up. Okay, we do.
Oh, yeah. You're good at that. You were always good at that. You probably still do. You probably wander out of the house calling your cat soft all week.
I do.
Soft cat. You're a soft cat.
I talk to my dog. I blow stuff up with my dog. And yeah, exactly.
Glenn, it's a 1-6 football team. There's a very agitated Jets team that the Patriots are about to play on Sunday. They could well be 1-7. I'm not cutting my hair until they win. How bad would the team have to be before the Kraft say, you know what, that didn't work. We have to overhaul everything?
Oh, I'd be shocked if they certainly not going to do it during the regular season. And I'm not crazy about their chances this week with Devontae Adams and you get Reddick back. So the Jets, and they are, as you said, they're desperate right now. Even at the end of the year, Tom, after year one, is that fair, really, to as bad as it might be? I think what they would end up doing is Gerard would stay and they would replace some of the coordinators. Certainly, they would look at Alex Van Pelt and say, well, this is not working offensively. And that concerns me with Drake Maye because, you're going to go on to another offensive coordinator. Brady had like 3 of them in his entire career and used to bitch when they replaced them. So I think that's difficult. But I don't think anything's going to happen in year one. Do you? Do you think Kraft would pull the trigger on Mayo in year one?
No, I don't.
How about Vrabel? How about if Vrabel is still out there?
But the messaging has to improve. There has to now. I think that Gerard had an incredible amount of latitude, deservedly so, because he was not, as you pointed out earlier, put in a position to succeed.
No,
but he has to improve, just as Drake Maye needed to improve, just as every player. Gerard needs to improve on the things that he's not doing.
How can he improve with this? How can he improve with this roster? The one guy who I can see improving is Drake Maye. Maye. So do we judge him on? Okay.
Podium, messaging, control over the team, stability. As I've said, this team post-Bill needed to ooze competency. It doesn't ooze anything.
But Tom, you've been around too many good winning teams. What ends up happening is when you're losing every week and you're getting embarrassed and you're not competitive, you can't do any of that stuff. You can't improve the messaging. Oh, we just got beat 38-7, but we'll be fine. We're okay. Wait until next week. What do you do?
The interesting
on
thing
to San Diego. We're on to San Diego.
Bill could, even last year, as dysfunctional as it got when they were a 2-11 team or whatever they were, because Bill still had the cachet of, like, I did win 6 Super Bowls.
That's right. Gerard doesn't have that cachet.
No, they're reading, listening, hearing, watching all of the things that we're saying about him being impotent in terms of messaging and losing control, and they're feeling it too. So there's a difference between what he is going to deal with when he looks at his locker room and his players in an auditorium and what Bill was looking at.
Yeah, and it's not going to get quieter. It's not going to get quieter with Bill, even though Brian, his son, is still on the staff. That must be pretty uncomfortable. But I don't think it's going to stop because the Mannings are going to keep on asking him about it. McAfee's going to keep on asking him about the Patriots. And he's going to keep on talking, Tom.
Do you think
I don't think that's going to end.
All right, so is Bill actually helping himself to get another job after this?
Yeah, because of the job he's doing. Other owners, other owners don't care about the Patriots. They don't,
No. But
did they really care with Spygate? Did they really care about the Patriots with other things that happened with the organization?
Yes.
What Bill's going to do is what Doc Rivers and a lot of other coaches that get fired, what they end up doing. They go to the media. They have owners sitting on the couch watching TV saying, oh, my God, that Bill Belichick is so smart. And you know what? He was really good with the Patriots. That's the guy I want to hire next year. And then he'll hand over the keys. Bill will sit there and say, I want total control. And he'll sit there and hem and haw. And then finally, other than Jerry Jones, will hand over the keys and say, it's your party. No, I think it's helping him doing all of this media stuff. I think he looks great on this stuff.
Yeah, I do too, except for the growing airing of grievances on a weekly basis.
That's a New England thing. He's not going to coach in New England.
No, so but it starts to look petty.
Scratch that team off the list. That won't be one of his destinations.
Starts to look a little petty. Starts to look a little petty, a little cheap, little whiny. Starts to look a little whiny. And that's the thing is people don't drill down on the accuracy. People don't drill down on the accuracy of his statements. They just nod and go, oh, okay. Oh, he re-signed all my players. Cachet. Oh, they re-signed all my players, I guess. I guess they couldn't have been that bad. Well, Bill, they re-signed him all. You know why they had to re-sign him? Because they were probably poorly coached. That's why they were re-signing him. Maybe they had a shot at winning some games with him. All right, Glenn, how will the Celtics do this year? You excited about them still? How many years were you the voice of the Celtics?
15. So 7 with Johnny?
Around the rim and in.
Yeah. 14 and a half, right? 14 and a half. Listen, Tom, the people that heard me on the radio before last year for about 5 or 6 years, I constantly called them a cute little team. And it wasn't that I didn't like the team. It wasn't that I didn't think the team was wasn't that I didn't think the team was entertaining. It was extremely entertaining. I didn't think they had the maturity to get over the top to win. I think you really need veteran presence. You need guys that have been through it before. Before the season began last year, after the preseason, I said they're the best team in the league and they will win the NBA championship. They will win the championship. And I'm going to double down with you right now. They will repeat, win back-to-back, and Jason Tatum will be the league's MVP. They're that good.
He won't be the MVP.
He will be the MVP.
No, he won't. You have to score like 30 points a game.
Let's watch. Embiid is taking 62 games off this season, so you can take him off the list. There's a bunch of guys. Look, you can look at. Well, Jokic is yesterday's news. He's already won it. They're going to move on. The media likes to find somebody new.
Can you lean back one more time?
lean back?
Yeah, a little more. A little further. A little further.
You want me to fall off the chair?
The nipple! The nipple!
Some things you don't forget. You're like an old dog, man. Some things you don't.
Glenn, I think we should do this again.
I'll do it anytime you want, Tommy.
Buddy,
it's great catching up with you.
Great
really
catching up with you. Thanks again.
And
for
I do
coming
miss
on.
the juice back there. I do miss a lot of the action of every single day, dealing with stuff like this. Unfortunately, it may be some negative stuff here for a while, but good luck to you.
That really bums you out. All right, from Arizona, from the desert, Glenn Ordway. Thanks, Big O.
Thanks, Tommy.